As South Africa celebrates 30 years of constitutional democracy and human rights, we reflect on this significant milestone. Minister Ronald Lamola and the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development are convening at the National Conference to assess the progress and chart a way forward in advancing human rights since 1994. Held under the theme 3 Decades of Respect for and Promotion of Human Rights, the conference will gather key stakeholders and government departments. And for more on this, we're now joined by Deputy Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, John Jeffery, and he joins us via our video link. Deputy Minister, thank you so much for your time this evening. Perhaps let's start off here. Let's reflect on the 30 years of South Africa's transformation agenda and the efforts towards promoting democracy, development, as well as human rights.
Okay, let me just sort of give a historical context of why it is 30 years, and that is that we had constitutions before under apartheid South Africa. In the early 90s, there were negotiations between all the parties in South Africa, the political parties, both in Parliament and outside. Parliament was the tricameral Parliament, which was a white chamber, a coloured chamber, an Indian chamber. And those multi-party negotiations came up with an interim constitution which was passed by the tricameral Parliament and came into effect at midnight on the 26th of April 1994. So it will be 30 years of a democratic constitution. We had the interim constitution first, and then we had to have the Constitutional Assembly Parliament deciding on a new constitution, which was eventually passed in 1996. So it's basically an assessment of the 30 years of democracy and human rights in that period. Human rights more broadly, not just the right to vote and political and social rights, but also economic rights and delivery rights as well.
And as we take a step back, Deputy Minister, what would you say is the extent to which progressive realization of human rights has over the years been promoted through economic policies or through budgeting priorities?
Look, the sort of progressive realization of rights only applies to the socio-economic rights. The civil and political rights are rights that accrue immediately. So there's no sort of lead-in period. Obviously, South Africa in 1994 was a very different country. There were a number of so-called Bantustans, homelands, that because apartheid South Africa wanted to divide everybody, and each ethnic group that they perceived had its own homeland. And spending effectively on Black African people was significantly less than on white people, on coloured people and Indian people. So there was a huge backlog to get through. We've done, I think, relatively well in terms of the delivery of housing, education, basic education and tertiary education, water, electricity, sanitation. Obviously, we've still got some way to go. And with the decline in the economy, there's been less funds available, and also that infrastructure has not, in some circumstances, not been maintained. So that has also undermined efforts to continue to ensure the delivery, for example, of electricity or water.
And of course, you're saying that more still needs to be done. But how would you evaluate, governance measures established to strengthen national structures, institutions, and civil society, which play a role in promoting and safeguarding human rights?
Well, I think it's as far as civil society, it's not so much government's responsibility to promote civil society, but to ensure that there are partnerships with civil society. In the Department of Justice, I find that civil society will often give you more accurate information as to what is happening in a particular court, in a particular place, than the officials from the department do. So they also have good ideas around how issues can be resolved, possible solutions to problems. And then we have the Chapter 9 institutions and the Public Service Commissions that are institutions supporting democracy. There was a panel discussion with the Commission for Gender Equality, the Human Rights Commission, and the Public Protector as the last item this afternoon. So they are also important. So I think there's a lot there. There are questions around should these organizations, it was an issue that Professor Kader Asmal, when he went back to being a member of parliament before he retired, had raised of should we have so many Chapter 9 institutions? Should there not be a better way of making use of funds available to them? But I think that we are a vibrant democracy, and that is one of South Africa's strengths.
And Deputy Minister, perhaps if you could also unpack our national, regional and international actions and policies in strengthening the promotion and the protection of human rights in accordance with international human rights standards.
Yeah, look, on that, if we take internationally the globe as a whole, there are a number of international treaties on different aspects of human rights. So, for example, there's a treaty on the rights of the child. There will be a treaty on women. There will be a treaty on civil and political rights. There will be a treaty on socioeconomic rights, and so on. And in terms of and then we also have regional treaties in terms of the African Union, and with all these treaties, we have to, as a country, as South Africa, report to the treaty bodies. They're usually committees set up of experts. In the case of the continental treaties, the African treaties, it's the African Commission on Human and People's Rights that we report to. So the countries, including South Africa, have to give reports on how far they've gone in terms of implementing different rights. And then there will be a presentation, and the country will get interrogated on what it's actually done. So those are very important aspects for monitoring South Africa's achievement of the realization of the things that it's meant to do.
All right, Deputy Minister, thank you so much for your time this evening. That is John Jeffery. He is the Deputy Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, just highlighting there and reflecting on 30 years of human rights in South Africa.